Hello, y'all. I thought I'd do this little video to maybe try to encourage you about having faith. And this faith in many matters, and faith to believe God for whatever you're praying for. Uh, the Lord said that we have to have faith. Saying to this mountain, be thou removed and cast into the sea, and it shall be done. Whatsoever you ask in my name, believing, you shall receive, as long as it's the Lord's will. Uh, But I want to give you a little testimony in my life about faith. The Lord convicted me a few videos back when I mentioned where I was fasting for the Lord to use me more than ever in my life. And I'd mentioned a few gifts of the Spirit the Lord had used me in. Truly, truly miraculous, okay? I mean, the person that I shared this, one of the, several of the what I call miracles, and was God using me in the word of knowledge, where I didn't have a clue about these individuals, never even seen them before in my life, and then they revealed to me what I shared with them was factual. Uh, uh, but when my first son was born, this is a testimony about the Lord healing my son when he was born. Well, I was kind of hurt and upset with my wife because she had, the scriptures clearly say the Lord will help women in childbirth and bearing a child. It will be painful, but he will with it will it's possible. He will help them. Okay. But unfortunately, my wife gave in to getting an epidural, uh, and she knew in my heart it was important to me that she had the baby without any kind of drugs or any kind of drugs. Period. Okay, so I'm sitting in the uh, her hospital room, and this was our first two sons were born in a hospital, and then I finally talked my wife into getting a midwife. So my last two sons were born with midwives. Uh, so that was great. But anyway, so I'm sitting in the room and I'm watching they call it a fetal monitor. It has a graph, and and I could literally tell my wife when a contraction was getting ready to start before she even felt it really. And so uh, so I'm watching it. I don't know. You know, obviously we left home and went to the hospital. I think her water broke, and then uh, we left. Anyway, most women know when it's the baby's coming soon. So 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 we went to the hospital. So anyway, she's having contractions, uh, and they're starting to pick up. I'm watching the fetal monitor, and they're getting more and more serious. So she's feeling more and more pain, and and uh, uh, they had a graph. It's like a graph, and you could see as the contraction got more and more serious and painful. I reckon you could say as well. It would get higher and higher. And I knew in my heart, well, the baby's getting ready to come. Okay, the baby's getting ready to come. And but anyway, my wife couldn't bear it, even though the Lord said that we could bear it. But that's another story. Lack of faith on her part. And she gave me a really hard time about. I didn't give her a hard time about ended up getting an epidural. I didn't give her a hard time about it. I just let her know my heart was really broken about it. Okay. But she gave me a hard time just letting her know my heart was broken about it. Okay. But anyway, it's a little irrelevant. Okay. So, I knew the baby was really going to be born soon. So she decided to give in to an epidural. Okay. So then the contractions stopped. I mean, I'm just telling you, this is what happens. This is what happens when we don't do things God's way. Okay. I'm just telling you. Okay. So the contractions stopped. So it was well over an hour when there was nothing on the charts. It totally destroyed what God was doing via nature, via God's natural process. Okay. And so finally, from the epidural, from the time she got the epidural, oh, it was well over an hour for sure before the baby was born, to the best of my knowledge. It was a long time. Okay. So anyway, my son was born, and so you know, in a hospital, they take the baby, clean the baby up, and all this stuff, and and so I'm sitting in the hospital room with my wife, and so they come in there. I'll never forget this. It's a very serious moment in my life. So they come in there, and you know, I'm wanting to get out. I'm a man of faith. Okay. I would have preferred my wife have a midwife in the very beginning and have the child at home. Okay. But anyway, that all is what it is. So the bottom line is, the nurse comes in there and says, after I said, because I wanted to, let's go home the next day, and they said, well, we got to keep your son at least several more days, Mr. Nix. He has a very high bilirubin count. Okay, bilirubin, very high. They also call it jaundice. Okay, and well, I didn't connect the two with the messing up God's plan and the epidural and the jaundice, but the Lord has showed me actually well a few years after the fact, really, as sometimes I had thought about it through the years, and the Lord literally spoke to me and said, the reason your son had the high bilirubin count was because, look, none of my other sons ever had these problems. Okay, when they were born. Okay, and my next to the oldest son was born in the hospital, but fortunately my wife didn't get drugs. She didn't have an epidural, nothing. She had the baby naturally. Okay. So this is my only son that had this problem. Okay. Because my wife had an epidural. So anyway, I'm wanting to get out of the hospital. And so the head nurse comes in there. I'll never forget it. Her name was Miss Crutch. Okay. I think it was Crutchfield, but I think they called her Miss Crutch. It was an older lady. And she says, Mr. Nix, we're going to have to keep your son several more days at least. He has a very high bilirubin count. And if we don't bring it under control, it could cause permanent brain damage. Okay. Well, that's pretty serious. You know, thinking to myself, right, when she's telling me this, she was making me know it was serious. And so I'm literally sitting on the foot of my wife's bed, okay? And Satan speaks to me so plainly. He says, look at you. This is exactly what he said, okay? He said, you living for God, you love the Lord with everything in your heart, you obeying God. Your son's born, and now the doctors are going to have to take care of him. He's something wrong with him, and now they gonna have to keep him in the hospital and take care of him. Well, that made me real angry. Okay, so Satan didn't know me very well, obviously. So I'm sitting there at the foot of the bed, and so right away, I told Satan in my spirit, I said, no, I'll take my son out of here right now. And I'll show you God can heal my son. Okay. And so so I told my wife, well, we gonna take our son anyway. Well, I knew I could feel the pressure from her. I knew her well. She wasn't going along with that. She didn't put up. She didn't speak out loud uh, against me, but I knew in her spirit she didn't like it. Okay, and so so anyway, I go to the nurse's station. Okay, and I tell them, I said, well, I'm gonna trust the Lord to heal my son, and I want to leave. I want you to bring my son, and we're gonna leave. No, you can't do that, Mr. Nix. You cannot do that. This is really serious. Okay, uh, and they mentioned the permanent brain damage again. Okay, and she said, you go back in your room, and I'll get. This is when the head. I think actually this is when the head nurse came in, and so I waited. I waited, and I wasn't being very patient about it, because when I decided I was gonna have faith on my son, I'm ready for action. I'm ready to prove to Satan that God's gonna heal my son. Okay, so anyway, I go back up to the nurse's station, and say she's coming. So I go back in the room. So I tell Miss Crutch again. Okay, uh, I'm trusting God to heal my son. I love the Lord with everything in my heart, mind, soul, and body, and I know He can heal my son. Okay, and so they mentioned they had him under the light. We have to keep him several more days. We have him under the light. Okay, they put these little babies under a very bright light. Okay, and and I reckon, I don't know what else they do what they were doing to try to bring this under control. And but it was very serious case of it. And so I said, well, I'm trusting the Lord. So she finally says, well, Mr. Nix, she knew I sounded very strong in my faith, and I was very she knew I was very serious. She says, and she actually ends up saying, well, Mr. Nix, if I had the kind of faith you got, or you seem to have, I'd take my son too. I mean, that's literally what she said, God bless her. And she said, but I'm going to have to get the doctor, okay, in here to tell you about this and how serious this is, okay? And you will have to sign papers relieving us of all responsibility. And I said, well, please get the doctor in here right away, okay? All right, so I'm sitting there waiting. Like 45 minutes or so goes by, the best I can remember. I go back up to the nurse's station. I said, when is the doctor coming? Okay, because I'm ready for action now. I'm ready to get out of there and see God move. Okay, and to show the devil, okay, my God's a healer. Okay, and so I wait and I wait and I wait. And I think they were making me wait to make me think about it more. Okay, but it didn't work. Okay, so the doctor finally comes in, tells me, you taking a chance of your son having permanent brain damage. Okay, and I said, doctor, I understand you doing your job. I respect what you say and what you're doing, but I'm going to believe God to heal my son. Well, you're going to have to sign documents and papers saying we've explained this to you and releasing us of all responsibility. I said, yes, sir, bring him on. I mean, that's literally what I said, bring him on. And then they made me wait a while longer. Okay, they finally brought the papers. Okay, and I signed the papers. Okay, and so they finally bring my son. Okay, they bring my son, and we get out of there. So we on the way. This was in Savannah, Georgia. We were living in Bluffton, South Carolina, right before you get to Hilton Head. And so we going home. Went over the Talmadge Bridge from Savannah into South Carolina, going across the causeway there, and now one of the things they didn't say is uh, the nurse asked me, will you bring him back tomorrow? Okay. Will you bring him back tomorrow and let us check him? And I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know. I doubt it. I said, I doubt it. But I might. Okay. And so we're going already over the Talmadge Bridge into South Carolina. So my wife looks at me and says, and she's real quiet about this. Okay. I could tell she's not on the bandwagon. Okay. So I'm not getting any encouragement from her, to have this faith, to see God move, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So she says, will you take him back tomorrow? And I told my wife, I said, I don't know. I said, maybe. I'll think about it. So finally the next day came, and I said, okay, just to try to help my wife. Okay. We took him back, and they did the blood test on him and all that, and they came back and said, everything's just fine, Mr. Nix. He's just fine. And so we went home. Now let me tell you, so the Lord fixed that. The Lord took care of that. Okay. But let me share something with you I've learned, and the Lord showed me when I told you the Lord showed me, like none of my other sons had this issue, and it had to do with the drugs and man intervening with what God's natural plan is for a woman to have a baby. And so I didn't know it for a long time, but my only son out of all four of my sons, so my oldest son that this happened to, has very bad eyes. Okay. I remember when he signed him up to play baseball, and he had a hard time, batting, hitting the ball. And still, we still didn't realize he had bad eyes, even after all of that. I just figured, well, some people just, aren't good hitters, right? And so anyway, I'm holding this phone with my fingers. They get kind of. So anyway, the Lord showed me years later, okay, and Daniel told me not all that long ago, and he's like 39 years old now, something. He has very bad eyes. Okay. I don't recall us ever taking him all the way through raising him. Daniel left home when he was like 19 or 20 years old. I might be wrong, but I don't ever recall him taking him to the eye doctor. I don't ever remember him saying he needed glasses or anything. Okay. But the Lord showed me, okay, this bright light. Okay. This is my only son, by the way, that needed glasses and had bad eyes. Okay. So my only son. Okay. So the Lord showed me this. He literally said, the reason your son doesn't have a 20/20 vision, a good vision, and his eyes are messed up, is when they put him under this light. Well, they say they blindfold him, but most likely, it's obviously they didn't blindfold him in time, or they took the blindfold off of his eyes too soon, but they damaged his eyes. Okay, that's the bottom line. I know that as well as I know my name, because God showed me that. Okay, and he showed me that also. He's your only son. That's vision is not good. Okay, and his eyes are were bad. So anyway, not sure why the Lord didn't heal his eyes, but my prayer was about the brain damage stuff and the high bilirubin count. So the Lord healed him from that. And but anyway, it's a story of faith, ladies and gentlemen. The Lord will test our faith. Okay, think about that. You're told over and over your son could have permanent brain damage. Okay, now Satan had already kind of mocked me and my relationship with God by saying, well, look at your son. He's born now, and he's got he's got problems. They got to keep him in here. He can have brain damage. Okay. And but I wasn't playing none of that stuff. I'm a man of faith. Okay. And so anyway, and I believe I know for a fact God works miracles. Like I say, he's used me in the gifts of the Spirit before, through the word of knowledge and the gift of healing one time, before, other than this time with my son. Okay. But the Lord is awesome, ladies and gentlemen. But he many times, Satan will get involved and want you to doubt and doubt. Let me tell you something. Satan don't want God to do a miracle. Satan don't want your faith. He don't want you to step out in faith and trust God. Okay. But that's what's required, ladies and gentlemen, if we want to see the power, the miracle working power of God in our life. Okay. We need to be in the word, and our heart can't condemn us, meaning we got to know we're living holy and that we're right before God. Okay. And as Paul says, walk worthy of your calling. Okay. That you may be counted blameless before the Lord on that day. So we got to walk worthy. Okay. And the Lord wants to heal us. The Lord wants to work miracles in our life, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. He wants to do that. Okay. He truly does. Okay. And he will, if we're walking in the Holy Spirit, not in the flesh, and we're being obedient to him. Okay. So I encourage you to walk in the Spirit, live holy. The word says, without holiness, no one shall see the Lord. Okay. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. So I encourage you to live holy, walk holy, and as the scripture says, build yourself up on your most holy faith. Okay. Most holy faith. Okay. And watch God do miracles in your life. Watch him do miracles in your life, through you, for you, and to you. And I mean that. I encourage you to do that. Okay. May the Lord bless you.